Hey, my name is ShawNshawN. I sell art on ShawNshawN.co and specials on eBay. Today we're going to review The Turning. So The Turning is a movie by Floria Sigismundi. It's based on the book called The Turning of the Screw from the 19th century, late 19th century, 1898, I think. It has actresses Mackenzie Davis as Kate Mendel, Finn Wolfhard as Miles Fairchild, the older son. Brooklyn Prince is Flora Fairchild, the youngest daughter that the governess is kind of overseeing and teaching her, schooling her. Barbara Martin is Miss Gross, kind of this really quirky old housekeeper for the household that's probably been there a few generations. So this young teacher, Kate, she's a school teacher, but she kind of wants to make more of an impact. And she gets this job offer to be a school governess at this for this family, for this young girl. She's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I never tried this before. Make a real big difference as far as making maybe a superstar student or something. So she arrives and she finds out they live on this massive estate, right? With, different wings of the houses, 3 or 4 stories, probably a couple basements, and really kind of a really nice setting to shoot a film of this sense. But as she comes there, she meets, and the children are a little bit quirky. They make kind of really off-color jokes. They make really bad jokes, and you're like, what's wrong with these kids? The Miss Gross, the housekeeper, tells them they're of a special pedigree, and they're like super special kids, and you're like, oh, this is really... So it's kind of interesting to see this kind of, royalty kind of connection with Miss Gross. Is kind of, she has that kind of status classist, which is more kind of from the English culture. I mean, at the high levels in America, you kind of have that as well. You see that with people that have servants, but it's not very usual in America. So as she gets to know the kids, she stays like Miles, maybe this tormented boy, maybe he's a sadistic, maybe he's not. You don't really know. At the same time, you have Flora, the little young girl. She seems to have some issues of herself, maybe talking to ghosts or something. So it's a little bit strange as well. Miss Gross is awesome because she's this old housekeeper and she just has these really bizarre rules around the house. She acts really strange. She treats the kids like they're kind of like royalty. So it has this really nice, I think Miss Gross really builds the character of the kids in this castle. Yeah, and then everything starts to go amiss. She starts to find out about what happened to the ex-governor, what happened to the groundskeeper, the parents died. So it's like all these strange things build up. So now I'm going to analyze it. It'll be spoilers here, so just if you don't like spoilers. So I'd say the most interesting part of the film is kind of the way they edit the film. It's really kind of strange. You don't know if Kate is being infested, bewitched by these 2 ghosts of the ex-groundskeeper and the ex-governess, or is something else happening? Is the house possessing her, kind of like in The Shining? Or is she just losing her mind? It's kind of like all that 3 is kind of put together. Other thing you don't know is if the little girl is kind of normal, if the older boy, who's maybe, I think he's 13, 14, he's, maybe he's 16 and he's been expelled out of school. Is he like really kind of a bully? Is he been beat up at school? So he kind of plays this role as well. Is he spying on Kate? This is really the question in the book or in this film, right? And then she starts to find this old diary of the last governors, and she finds out like this groundskeeper, maybe they were having some kind of weird relationship, maybe a sexual relationship, and then it was uncovered and it was kind of a scandal. And obviously in the 1890s that would have been totally scandalous that the 2 servants would have had a relationship at all. So, but nowadays obviously with your phone, you can just literally see anything you want. So it's kind of like, I don't know if that works here on that level, but at 13, 14, it's PG-13. So I think that's an appropriate age to kind of introduce this kind of weird topics. So I think maybe in the book, maybe the plot made a little bit more sense or was more obvious. I read on Wikipedia that it doesn't. It was actually create a lot of controversy in itself because it really sets a tone of ambiguity between what happens, and I think they've captured that really well in the film. One of the disturbing parts that I don't know if I like it. As an artist myself, they kind of stereotype the mother as this crazy artist. She's kind of institutionalized, it looks like, but with other retirees, so you don't know, is it a retiree home? Is she crazy? And she's drawing inside of this pool, and you're like, why is the pool empty? Why is she drawing inside a pool? It's kind of a strange place. The rest of the class is above the pool in a normal drawing area in a hallway that's overlooking the pool. So it's kind of like this really strange setup because you would never do an art class that way. So it's just really strange. And the mother actually can paint, and she gives her painting self-portrait for Kate. And Kate goes like, okay, whatever, got my crazy mother. She's totally distant. She doesn't know what to do with her. And then later that comes up in the fact, after all this really spooky and kind of really disturbing things about the house and the kids and the ex-groundskeeper and the ex-governor kind of come to light, you know, Kate's like, oh my God, this place is crazy. And then she gets an envelope with her mother's drawings, but then the envelope's been opened. And the housekeeper says she hasn't done anything, but then she's like, oh, this is a really disturbed person. So she obviously read them, right? And you open the drawings and they're just solid black, right? And you're like, oh my God, she just destroyed her own work, right? She just overworked him. But at the same time, maybe you think maybe the housekeeper like shaded over them so that she wouldn't know what it was. Like maybe there was keys to the escape, or she's completely lost her mind as the mother. And you also make this connection maybe at the end, maybe the daughter became the mother somehow. It's just kind of a really weird ending because the mother has done this huge mural inside the swimming pool, which I think they should have probably visually shown her drawing it. That would have been really cool because that would have shown how the mother's completely losing her mind. You're like, oh my God, the mother's losing the mind. The daughter's not even there for the mother. And then, you know, kind of this duality that would have existed between the two characters. I think they could have made that a little stronger with her physically doing the mural, but not showing what the mural is, just show her physically painting it really up close. And then you wouldn't know what's going on. And then later they would reveal it. I think that would have had a bigger impact in the film. It's really bizarre too, because the mother's painting in this empty pool and you're like, why would you paint there? And then later there's certain events that happen with the pools that kind of tie all those events together, kind of full circle. So you're like, was Kate really seeing herself as a vision, or her mother go through a similar event? It triggered her to be this way. You know, it's kind of, or was she speaking code through the drawings? Had she lost her mind? Was she possessed by the ghosts as well? So there's all this kind of ambiguity, which the book really captures as well. The stereotype kind of grates. I don't know if it was in the book or they just kind of show it because it's a visually medium, but it's kind of grates on my nerves because it's like artist. It's kind of offensive that people think you're crazy. A lot of people do think artists are crazy, and they portray them a lot in films this way because artists are very emotional and really put their emotion sometimes into the painting, and it can be really dark occasionally, or it can be very happy. Some artists, you know, do really nice landscapes like do 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 do, and other people are like ah. So it's kind of this duality of artists, but you know, a lot of movies kind of play up the craziness of an artist, which you can kind of relate because a lot of artists aren't going to make it, and they're going to be poor, and it's really hard sometimes to make it as an artist. Other times it's not. Other artists become very famous, but people don't know about that, so they're kind of reinforcing this negative stereotype of an artist. I think for the viewer that are not artists, it's going to work well because everyone can relate to doing black drawings, and they're kind of like, ooh, this is a little bit dark, and then they do solid black drawings, and you're like, oh, she's completely lost her mind. So it has nice symbolism, I think, there. But again, it's kind of self-reinforcing a negative stereotype about artists. Another thing they suggest is that Kate is maybe sleepwalking, but the way they shot the film, it's mostly from Kate's viewpoint, so you don't get the feeling like she's sleepwalking at all. So you get the point that the house is easy possessed. There's one or two ghosts. So I don't really get this aspect that she's sleepwalking. It's more like the kids are like, oh, you're crazy, you know, and then they just keep telling her she's crazy, and eventually she becomes crazy. So it's this interesting kind of thing. And eventually some Kate, you know, with the diary, and then she's seeing these ghosts, and she's like, she's seen the ghost in front of the kid. She's like, you saw that? And she's like, you don't see anything. You're crazy. What are you talking about? So it's pretty funny because the kids are just straight laced, you know, and, you know, kids would be like totally fearful of ghosts, right? So it's just kind of displaced it where you have this young adult being afraid of ghosts while the kids are not afraid of ghosts. So it's kind of like, it's really interesting. I like the sense too that this setting is in the 90s. So this is right before the cell phone generation, right? So the 90s, it's like they set it with a little snippet of Kurt Cobain, how he shot himself. So you have that kind of interesting thing of why did Kurt Cobain kill himself? You know, you modernize this story and you bring kind of his really creepy kind of his music and you bring that into this setting, you know, symbolically. So I kind of like that. They had some really spooky music that she plays on a tape that's just totally bizarre. And she got it from, I don't remember where, but it was just like the most bizarrest, creepiest music you could possibly play. Like if you're stuck in a creepy house, wouldn't you play like some pop, really fun music? So it's kind of odd, but it sets the movie tone. And yeah, the setting kind of makes Kate crazier and crazier because she's all cut off from communication because she's before cell phones. And I think a lot of modern day horror films are kind of doing this pre-cell phones because the cell phones allow you to talk to anyone, call, text, whatever. And so it's really hard to have that kind of isolationism that you used to have. And now you don't really have isolationism. You have isolation in the sense that you can't reach these people that you're texting, but it doesn't make them less real in a way. And so you have this isolating atmosphere. The kids are kind of quirky. The kids don't recognize the ghost. She's getting preserved by ghosts. Then, the ghosts are getting more and more into her mind. And no one backs up her story, so she's just kind of slowly losing her mind in a way. So it's kind of, that's an interesting ambiguity. One key thing I thought they should have filmed, which they didn't film, is they talk about the parents died in a car wreck right outside the grounds, which that was the original story for the governess, the last governess, that she died that same way, but actually dies in a different way. They should have filmed, I think, the parents dying, and then maybe the kids were at the funeral or something, and then kind of like then pull that forward. That would have been like, whoa, these kids have witnessed a death. That the physically passing of it would have been much stronger, I think, and resonated more in the film versus, if you tell it, it's fine in the book because you're that's the only way to talk is to tell it. But in the film, you should really visually show these kind of things. So I think they could have added 5-10 minutes here, kind of maybe a flashback, or probably earlier in the film maybe, to kind of show that, there was this terrible sequence of events with maybe the parents. How did Miss Gross get part of the family? Why has she been there so long? There's a lot of mystery as well. But yeah, I think there was some potential in a flashback sequence there. They do have a flashback sequence with the ex-governor, and she's trying to escape. And then the new governess is trying to escape, and it's kind of the similar kind of well-worn path. And then you're like, well, did the first one die in the pool? Did she die in their car? Does the second one possess? Does she die in her car? Why is she back at the house? They have this really weird editing sequence at the end, and it just totally throws you for a loop because you think it goes one way and then it doesn't. You're like, what happened? So it's really great for it because they just leave the whole story like you don't know what the hell happened in the story. I think they could have done maybe a little more better job kind of making the house maybe seem maybe possessed versus the ghost, to kind of play with that a little more. But they did do some really weird kind of build up there that kind of added to kind of the slow breakdown of Kate's sense of reality to like, oh, this place is super creepy and kind of sadistic and, sexually, but like in a very subtle sense. Like they have needles inside of this model all in her breast, right? So it's like, and it looks very vicious, but it's on a styrofoam thing. Miles did it, so is it a joke? Is he a sadistic person? So it kind of brings up these nice elements. I think I would recommend the film. It's really kind of a fun watch to see where it goes. I don't know if the ending is super satisfying because it's ambiguity, but again, the book was written the same way, where it led up a lot of criticism afterwards of ghosts and supernatural and what happened actually in the book. So I think they do a pretty good job of capturing the essence of that book and creating this really weird sense of you don't know what really happened. A lot of horror films kind of come full circle, and they kind of come full circle with the mother-daughter, the drawings, pool, and then back to the daughter. So that's full circle, but the essence of what happens to the main character, you don't really know. Does she die? Does she live there? Does she become the crazy person working at this haunted castle? You don't know, right? So it's just kind of like a little bit unsatisfying. It's like, where's the final scene when I get in the film, right? But yeah, it's a good film. I recommend it. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.